Ryan, Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals happened Wednesday night, and we got our wish for the first half or so. We finally had a basketball game, a competitive basketball game. There was no one jumping out to a 20-point lead in the first. It wasn't the prettiest of basketball games, but with these two teams that play the defense that they play, you expect it to be a little bit uglier than two teams that don't play any kind of defense at all. Still, a combined 38% from the field and 22% from deep in the first half saw Miami leading by 5, 42-37, and then second half stayed competitive in the first half of the third quarter until the Celtics finally figured out how to score a bucket, and then they kept scoring buckets, and Miami couldn't get any buckets, and it went downhill really quickly for the Miami Heat after that.
Yeah, it was the lowest scoring Eastern Conference Finals first half in 8 years, which I didn't go back and look it up, but that's probably like a Bulls-Cavs series. Something like that. I just had to think. Or it wouldn't have been the Cavs, it would have been the Heat, probably. We'll see. So it was a really ugly game, and I didn't know like what I'd prefer. Did I prefer like at least one team playing good basketball that was just up by 20 points, or did I prefer the ugly basketball that we got in the first half? But at least it was competitive, and I still think I tended to be more interested at the fact that it was competitive, but Boston obviously turned something on there at the end of the third quarter, and they kept it going the rest of the game. So I don't know that the final score was necessarily indicative of what kind of game it was, because I do think it was really ugly there for a minute. And there's going to be excuses, reasons, whatever you want to call them, floating around. Jimmy Butler, probably not right dealing with whatever he's dealing with in his knee. Tyler Hero didn't play. Kyle Lowry banged up as well. But I think some of the Celtics are banged up too, and it's what you've said, it's what you've heard a lot of the national pundits say, is the Celtics are just a better team, and maybe that's what we're seeing. I know the Heat have won 2 blowout games as well, but it seems like the Celtics are able to impose their will on the Heat, more so than the Heat are on the Celtics, and both these teams are really good defensively, where I think difference is one, the Celtics are better defensively than the Heat are, but two, they can do way more on offense than what the Heat can do. Like, the Heat have really bad offense, and even in some of the games that they've won in this series, their offense still hasn't been great. The Celtics just played bad in those games and gave credit to the Heat. Again, a good defense, but I think overall it comes down to really the difference in the offense, the difference for the Celtics to have multiple guys who can get them a bucket, and the Heat just not being able to get anything going on top of Jimmy Butler going MIA these last 2 games, even though, again, he's hurt probably. Kyle Lowry and Max Strus combining to go like 0-15 last game certainly doesn't help, and the team as a whole, I think they shot like 30 for 94 for the game. So shooting, no type of shooting at all for the Heat, and I don't know, it seems like the series is over. Game 6 is going back to Boston. And if the Heat are going to obviously continue to play like this, they haven't shown us anything on offense in these last 2 games, and I don't really have a lot of confidence in Miami for Game 6.
Yeah, it's the stuff that we talked about before the series. A couple things that I saw coming into it, as far as the Celtics having a tougher test to get to this point than the Heat had. They played better opponents, healthy opponents, and they still were able to win and move on healthy in the most part for Milwaukee. Obviously, Chris Middleton wasn't there. But for Miami, the Hawks weren't a challenge whatsoever. The Sixers were decimated by their own injuries, both with, Joel Embiid in the body and James Harden in the mind. So there was just nothing happening there that was going to cause much of a challenge on their side. And it's, we talked about this before the series. I didn't know where the scoring was going to come from for Miami, besides obviously Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo at times. Didn't expect Jimmy to get hurt, and then that went out the window. Duncan Robinson has been MIA for the most part until this last game. Tyler has been hit or miss, and now he's not even playing. And so there's just, and then you got Oladipo, who's been fantastic in spurts. Defensively, he's been great, but offensively, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with his outside shot in this last game. Got the rare missed badly again by Mike Breen on like back-to-back 3 opportunities by Oladipo. It's just, I didn't know where the scoring was going to come from, and it's come to fruition, whereas with the Celtics, I think they do have more talent overall on their team. A big trade to bring in White from San Antonio. You have a starter level, almost point guard as your backup to deal with and help with all the injuries that the Celtics have had to deal with on their own. Robert Williams has been injured. Marcus Smart and Al Horford missed game 1. Smart missing the last game as well. And then Jason Tatum is definitely not 100%. There's something going on with that shoulder. Jaylen Brown didn't lead. At this point in the season, everyone's a little nicked up, but it just seems like Miami has a little more than just nicked up going on. Lowry has not been the same since the hamstring injury. He doesn't have his burst of speed. He can't stay in front defensively like he usually can. So it's just injuries have absolutely plagued this series. But at both teams' full strength, I thought the Celtics were just a little bit more talented. And as much as injuries have bit both sides, the Celtics have had a little bit better injury luck than Miami has in this series. So it's just playing into the factor that Miami was already in an uphill battle, and the injuries play a factor, make it even more of an uphill battle.
Miami last game, they went into halftime with the lead, but they probably should have been up by way more than 5 because the Celtics were really bad in the first half. And that probably should have been like the light bulb that went off in our heads. Like, oh, Miami's not winning the series because even if the Celtics play like that, 2 threes, and now they're in the lead here. And with the Celtics being able to really go at Miami in kind of whatever ways they want with the injuries that are on both sides, I just don't know that Miami's going to do anything on, again, the offensive side of the ball that's going to put any type of fear in the Celtics, because it feels like a 5-point lead for the Celtics is like a 10-point lead. Mm-hmm. But like a 5-point lead for the Heat, because they're not going to extend it to 9, 10, 11. At least now, maybe before the Jimmy Butler injury, it was a little bit different. But now it seems like if you're down against the Heat, it's no problem. And if you're up against the Heat, like it's way more monumental of a lead than a 6-point lead or like a 7-point lead would normally be, just because they can't score. And you see some of the talent deficiencies that they've had, and it helps them with, guys going off in the regular season. I know Hero's out, but Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, and being able to pull different things from all of these guys, Dwayne Dedmon, and it's pretty commendable. But when you get into the playoffs, it's a different game, and the talent, at least to me, has just been overwhelming on the Celtics side. And the games you've won were games where Jason Tatum's out here scoring 6 or 8 points, and that's just not normally going to be the case. I know it's not normally the case for Jimmy Butler, but it has been the last 2 games, and even 2.5 games, because the half he went out, he only had 8 points a half, was 3-8, and he's 10 for his last 40 right now in this series. So if he's not scoring, the Heat have trouble getting the ball going anyway. And they're 745 last game from the 3. And when you looked at a lot of their 3-pointers, like you just said, the double way off again by Mike Breen, a lot of those 3s were just hitting the backboard, not even the rim, hitting the backboard, going straight back. And it was like, oh my God, like how is this? Like you guys are NBA players and you're out here airballing 3s. You're shooting 3s that aren't even close. So for Miami to come out like that, I don't know, it was pretty disappointing. Again, they had the lead at half, and you thought maybe they could slog out an ugly win. But I think the first half lead was honestly probably more of an indictment on them that they were only up by 5 points than it was any type of confidence builder for them moving forward to Game 6 and maybe Game 7.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler is so important to this team. It's ridiculous. Not just his scoring, but his ability to drive and make something happen, whether for himself or for a teammate. And his knee looks like it's so bad, he's not even willing to drive. And Ime Udoka has flat out said, like, this last game, we played him like because we knew that he wasn't able to do much on that knee. And so we stuck a center on him and let the rest of the team play their defense on everyone else who could still drive the ball. And so with Jimmy Butler not being able to be engaged in the way that he normally is, and he shows how important he is when he is healthy and fully engaged, it's so hard for Miami at this point. And even with Boston, as bad as they have, I mean, Game 4, they won by 20 points, and they shot, 37% in the game? That's a horrible shooting night, and you still won by 20 points. So it's just an embarrassment of riches right now on the Celtics side of the ball, especially compared to how much Miami is dealing with. It's just rough, and I didn't want this. I wanted Miami. born and raised a Laker and a Piston, so I hate the Celtics with every fiber in my being. I don't want to be right about this. I don't want them in the finals, and if they get to the finals, I hope Golden State embarrasses them in 5 games. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. This Celtics team is pretty damn tough, so it's going to be interesting to see if when we get to that point, what's going to happen. But I didn't want this. I definitely wanted Miami in this situation. I just didn't see it happening with, what the Celtics have shown from January on. It's just been, tremendous basketball on their side, especially defensively. And if they can just figure out how not to continuously turn the ball over. Jaylen Brown had, 4 turnovers in the first quarter? Like, you do that against Golden State, you're in a lot of trouble. Right now, you can survive that against Miami. But the fact that Marcus Smart being not 100% hurts, you might have to start Derek White because you need someone who's going to be a ball handler against Golden State, because Brown and Tatum are not ball handlers. Yeah, they can create their own shot at times, but they are not strictly ball handling kind of guys. And you've seen how many times they've turned the ball over, and they're not. Look, a lot of the steals are great by Miami. Miami is very, what is the word I am looking for, where you are taking advantage of the situation. My brain is not working. But anyway, Miami has created a lot of them, but Boston has just coughed it up so many times on their own as well, with just dumb passes, lazy passes, allowing Miami to take advantage of the situation. Opportunistic. That's the word I was looking for. Miami was very opportunistic with a lot of their steals, but Boston a lot of the times was just giving it away as well. And if they continue to do that, it's going to be hard to win an NBA championship turning the ball over as much as they are. Again, this series is not over. We have seen Miami go into Boston and win big. With the health situation going on right now, I don't think either one of us see that happening in Game 6. It certainly could. I believe this series is over.
Yeah, and so one thing about the health situation, and it might sound a little haterish, but I know it's obviously been a factor. If you're injured to the point where you're shooting 7 of 32 your last 2 games or whatever Jimmy Butler's at, just don't play. Because then you're hurting your team more by being out there for 35 minutes or however long he's playing out there than he would be if he just sat on the bench. And the same thing with Kyle Lowry, too. Like, I know the injuries have to play a part, but these guys do deserve criticism for poor play. And again, I know they're hurt, but if you're that hurt where you can't give your team 25% like you shoot field goal percentage, you shouldn't be out there.
Yeah, it's
like Gabe Vincent run crazy.
I guess you could let Gabe Vincent run crazy because he's had a pretty good series. He has stepped it up really big in this series, but we've seen Max Strus fall off especially from what he was in the last series, where he was hitting almost 50% from 3, and that's definitely not happening against this Celtic defense. Kyle Lowry, you know what he brings to the table when he is healthy. He's a very good defensive point guard, but he's nowhere near that. I don't know how you replace that, and especially Jimmy Butler. I don't know what you do to replace everything he brings to the table. The stat line that he is able to give you of 30-plus points and double-digit rebounds and almost 10 assists and a bunch of steals, a few blocks, he fills up a stat sheet in so many ways that helps your team. It's really hard to replace that. So I understand Spo, and Jimmy's a competitor. He's a fighter. You've seen that everywhere he goes. He wants to be out there, and he's going to fight tooth and nail to be on the floor. I don't know how you replace what he can do when he's not healthy to even have him on the floor at all. I understand what you are saying, and I don't argue about what you're saying. It's just I don't think Miami has the bodies to even come close to making up for the production, especially Jimmy Butler, but also a little Kyle Lowry right now, especially with Hero hurt, and Duncan Robinson is just not, I don't know if he fell out of favor or something. For whatever reason, they hadn't used him much until they've had to in this last 2 games.
And if these guys are going to go down, then they're going to go down. But yeah, Jimmy Butler's not helping that team, and neither is Kyle Lowry. And that's my main point. You're playing them way too long for them to be playing that bad.
All right, so you think this is over in 6? You think Boston closes this out this weekend?
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, same here, sadly. I would love to see Miami pull it off and get back to Game 7, but I don't know how that happens unless Boston continues to turn the ball over time and time again.
I guess the only reason it's not sad is because I think Celtics and Warriors is a better finals matchup than the Heat and Warriors is.
Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a what?